rebel force has penetrated the shield and landed on Endor.
This is where the fun begins.
A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away.
This is Rebel Force Radio.
Your source for the Force.
Star Wars news and commentary.
With Jason Swank and Jimmy Mack.
I've seen Star Wars 500 times.
Star Wars #1!
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe. I suggest we use it.
Now it's time for Rebel Force Radio.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Well, not that I'm counting down the days, but it is 11 days until Mandalorian Season 3. 11 days. You know, we've had so much Star Wars content that in some ways it doesn't seem like it's been that long, but it really has been a while since we've had a proper season of Mando. Of course, we had Mando showing up in Book of Boba Fett. And that's how we got the resolution to the Grogu going off to train with Luke Skywalker. But man, it's going to be great to have a full season of Mando goodness. And there's so much that it needs to deliver on when you think about it. We got to find out the fate of Moff Gideon. We got to figure out the fate of the Darksaber and the two factions of Mandalorian. We got to get Mando back in the good graces of the Armorer. You know, he's got to make amends. He's got to go, I don't know, boil himself in a lake underneath Mandalore or something. I don't know, whatever he's got to do. And we got to get Grogu wearing that chainmail shirt. We got to make that happen. If he ends up with a Mandalorian helmet, there's just so much to look forward to. And we were talking a little bit off air before we started the program this weekend. I said, well, you know, this could just lead into the first season of Ahsoka in terms of, introducing characters and situations and stuff. It'll take us into that first season. So much to look forward to. We're also having a good time with the Bad Batch after shows. And the Bad Batch had a fun episode this week. So check it out. We've got Bad Batch after show looking at episode 9, The Crossing. That's available on YouTube and on the podcast feed. But we got a great show this week, Rebel Force Radio, mid-February. Coming up, we've got Matt Busch in the Cantina, a very talented Star Wars artist and a guy that goes way back with us in our podcast adventures. Plus, some news, some headlines. Disney plans to restructure franchise entertainment output. Yeah, Bob Iger. Everyone was calling him the savior. Well, let's see what happens. Plus, more on that F-bomb. You know, the F-bomb that was not heard around the world from Andor, Marva. Yeah, we've got some more details about that. So lots of great stuff to look forward to. And you know what I look forward to each and every week is seeing this guy, and that is, of course, my good friend and yours from Chicago, Jimmy Mack.
Hey, Jason. Hey, Star Wars fans. Welcome back to Rebel Force Radio. This is my favorite time of the week. Now, of course, we talk Bad Batch, and that's another favorite time of the week, but this is just a little more favorite because we're not just limited to one kind of Star Wars. We could talk about any kind of Star Wars here on Rebel Force Radio, and we're going to do that. We'll talk about Andor, the Empire. That's right, I said it. And,
whoa, wait, hold on, wait. Jeez. I laid on the button.
We'll put it in there. We'll put
Matt
it in there.
Coming in
post.
hot this week on Rebel Force Radio. Jeez, Al.
It'll be there in post. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. The people,
I don't have any of those fancy editing tools so that Mac does. So the Patreon exclusive full show video is going to have full show audio as well. So
there you go. Make it into a ringtone. Share it with your friends and family and loved ones and local clergy members. So here we are, Rebel Force Radio, and there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on, but I still feel like this is the calm before the storm. When March hits, we're going to have Mandalorian Wednesdays. We're going to have Bad Batch Thursdays. Mm-hmm. There might be Bad Batch Thursdays might slip into a Bad Batch Friday here or there, depending on the old schedule, which I'll have to discuss with you, Jason. Got a couple things coming up, but for the most part,
we can do Bad Batch Fridays.
It might happen. It might happen. Fridays, yeah. It might happen. But I'm going to prioritize those Thursday nights for Bad Batch once once March rolls around, we have to talk about those Mandalorian shows the second they drop. I'm sorry, Bad Batch, but you're going to have to be a second priority once the Mando arrives in town. And I just can't wait for it. We're starting to see early results of some press that guys like Favreau and Filoni are doing. They did a little photo shoot for Empire magazine. And
I saw that, yeah.
And they kind of, tap danced around some softball questions that didn't really reveal too much, not too much. But it is on the creators' minds that they slotted in some important parts of the Mandalorian storyline into the Boba Fett series. And they do talk about that, They talked about the difficulty of doing a reset on the series without Baby Yoda. They like the Mandalorian Baby Yoda combination. And so do the guys sitting up in the ivory towers at Disney, and they probably
we're going to be talking about Bob Iger in a little bit. I'm sure that Bob Iger likes Baby Yoda as well.
Yeah. I don't think they like the idea.
What? You're going to get rid of the Baby? You're not getting rid of the Baby Yoda.
You know what? I swear to God, this meeting actually happened where Disney brass was saying, yeah, I don't care what Jedi took Grogu with him. You're going to put Baby Yoda in season 3 of The Mandalorian, or there ain't going to be no season 3 of The Mandalorian. Capiche?
Right.
But also, I think there was a lot of story restructuring going on in the wake of the Gina Carano fiasco. I think there were a lot of plans that involved Cara Dune, and they needed to go back to the drawing board on that. And I think...
Have you heard the rumors about a potential recasting on the Cara Dune character?
There's always been those rumors. And
they seemed like they heated up here in the last couple of weeks. I just see it a little bit more and more.
Yeah, well, the internet, Gina has her supporters out there, and they can be extremely vocal sometimes, and they come up with some wild scenarios and stuff.
You think it's Camp Carano that's pushing these?
Well, no, I'm not saying
ideas.
it's coming from Gina herself, but her fan base,
her supporters and fans,
maybe creating some fantasy scenarios and whatnot. However, I mean, I think there's a possibility of something like that happening always. It's just that Gina Carano brought an element to the character of Cara Dune that might be hard to replicate.
I agree.
The physical nature of Gina herself combined with the character and and the humanity she gave the character too. That's a loss for sure. But the Mandalorian's going to go on with or without Cara Dune. Let's face it. And the best way to sort of kind of put some first aid on those wounds is just making sure that good old Baby Yoda is firmly in the fold for season 3.
Yeah.
Let's not get experimental.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Hey, before we move into headlines, we do want to remind you that as listeners of Rebel Force Radio, that there's a lot more Rebel Force Radio that you may have not heard, and that's available on the RFR Patreon, which is our supported tier, and that's where if you go over to patreon.com/Rebel Force Radio or go to the Rebel Force Radio website and click on the Patreon banner. You get taken over to Patreon where you can select the level that fits your budget best and really support us here at Rebel Force Radio and get a lot of great things, including podcasts, exclusive podcasts that you can't find anywhere else. And Jim, you guys are always busy over there with shows like RPG and the Q&A, which, my gosh, Q&A is already up to more than 150 episodes.
Oh, yeah.
Which is just nuts. RPG's got some time, though. Only number 2, but that's all right. It's getting there.
The RPG is a new entry for 2023. It's hosted by myself, Matt Rashid, and Tyler Page, our very own Tyler Page. We pulled him away from the RFR switchboard to sit him down for some RPG, and it's a lot of fun. This basically is it's very self-serving. The whole show exists just to teach me how to play RPG, because it's something I've heard about my whole life. I've always been RPG curious, but I never really pulled the trigger on it. And I'm starting to learn. It's a lot of fun, and there's different things that can happen. Wacky events happen. We have full show video available of RFR RPG, and also an enhanced audio podcast featuring music and sound effects. It's all edited up nice and tight. You get to see us play the game in real time, as if you're in the room with us if you watch the full show video. But if you listen to the audio podcast, you'll hear it's a little bit more. I put a more like a Smuggler series edge to it. You know, I have all these files of Star Wars sound effects from producing those live action.
Just say there are sound effects. The man's got sound effects in there. You've got sound effects. I was digging it. I was listening to it the other day, and I texted Mac. I'm like, this is really fun. Because you get this conversation between the guys as that you would have when you're playing a game, but then they're back into the game and they're making moves, and then all of a sudden you hear the blaster bolts going off, and my character does this, and it's really, really cool. You can envision all this stuff too. It's very evocative, theater of the mind.
Here's a clip from RFR RPG featuring the adventures of Podcastus and Grando the Grand, who are out in the jungle being attacked by some wild animals.
Grando or Pod? Who wants to go next? You're up.
Grando, I insist.
I'll go. I'll go again.
Okay, Grando. So you know what to do. He's on your foot.
He's on my foot. So Grando's gonna embody Rambo, and he's gonna pull out his combat knife.
Ooh, look at that. It was getting fancy. Oh, you do this, like this Rambo, and then you stab your foot.
Oh, yeah! You stabbed your foot, guy. What
you stabbed your foot.
We're a couple of spazzes in this.
Yeah. So Candra's just over there shaking her. She's just shaking her head.
Oh, jeez.
Like,
man,
okay.
What's next for these idiots?
So you guys get on your speeders. They go up ahead. They find theirs. They get on it, and you guys off to the. Takes you about 20 minutes to get to the village.
Early reviews have been very positive. Eric from Phoenix says, I died laughing when Tyler stabbed his own foot, and then Jimmy shot the other foot. Classic RPG. So that's what you can expect on RFR.
It's only episode 2, and it's already classic RPG.
And then we also have RFR Q&A, which comes at you quite frequently if you are a supporter of RFR on Patreon. This week, we're talking Star Wars autographs. Me and Josh from Florida. Josh is a longtime RFR listener, seasoned Star Wars autograph collector, and so we do a little show and tell with some of our favorite Star Wars autograph memorabilia, and along with showing off our stuff, we share stories behind acquiring them. So again, RFR Q&A, this episode is available as full show video for RFR All Access. The audio podcast itself is available to all supporters of Rebel Force Radio, regardless of the tier. And I'm telling you what, I've been thinking about this lately. I don't think there's a single podcast out there that uses Patreon or a subscription-based service that offers you an exclusive monthly audio podcast for $1. Rebel Force Radio offers you 3 to 5 every month for just $1, and you're listening. So I think that's a pretty good deal there. So check out RFR Q&A. Check out RFR RPG.
All right,
Freaks.
I got to ask here, this picture of George signing autographs from the Autograph Hounds.
Yes,
you know what this reminds me of, right? Is this where this?
When he told everyone to get a job, to leave him alone and get a job.
No, I'm not going to keep doing this, guys. You know, this is $200 a signature, so why don't you just go out and get a job?
There you go, Mr. Lucas. $200 a signature, go get a job.
Yeah, these people are here to make money. They're not here. They're not fans. They don't care. They just want to make money.
They just want to put it on eBay.
That's it, sir. I just signed it. He just got $1,000 worth of stuff.
George actually said to autograph hounds bothering him, he once said, the reason I have all the money is because I work. So George is convinced not only does he have a lot of money, he has all the money. So I guess that's what his bank book looks like, and God bless him. So that's RFR Q&A, available to all Patreon members. Here's talk about getting George Lucas's autograph and others on the latest edition of Q&A.
It's so good. It's so good.
Get a job.
Well, we loved it because of the voice crack.
Get a job.
Yeah.
Get a job.
I mean, it's almost like
yelling at these guys.
your dad is scolding you there.
Get a job.
Hey, this is Dave Filoni of Star Wars The Clone Wars, and you are listening to Rebel Force Radio with Jason and Jimmy.
One of the greatest things about Ashley, she embodies it. On screen, off screen, when you meet her, have you ever met her and found her in a bad mood? Never.
Never.
She always has a smile for everybody. Yeah. She is tough, and I'll say it again, of all decisions I made, she was the best. So proud of her. So proud.
Hey there, this is Ashley Eckstein, voice of Ahsoka Tano from Star Wars The Clone Wars, and you're listening to Rebel Force Radio.
All right, well, let's get into headlines right now, because we got a few to tell you about.
I have good news for you, my lord.
That's good news. Come closer, I have good news.
Well, I don't know if this is good news, but the new old Grand Poobah of Disney Corp, Bob Iger, back in control, and a lot of people are saying, that we're saying that Bob's going to save the ship, right the ship, stop the bleeding. But it's very much a fiscal charge that he has, because that's really what's out of control at Disney. It seems to be the expenses. So the story is, how much is too much? According to the Hollywood Reporter, how much is too much? Marvel and Star Wars, Disney rethinks the franchise output. And they got a picture of Yoda here in this story. Extraordinarily expensive the costs are. Yeah, yes. Yeah. I mean... everybody, Jim, because of the pandemic, thought that streaming was the answer. Streaming was the answer because obviously the theaters were closed. And I think for a lot of studio executives and whatnot, they thought that what COVID really did was just sort of speed up the inevitable. That it was going that way anyway, right? But that COVID really just kind of fast forwarded everything as people became much more sophisticated in the way that they can consume media in their home, and that because you've got a great setup. It's less expensive in a lot of ways once you make that initial investment, maybe a nice TV, a sound system, and all that sort of thing. But the pandemic really ramped it up. So they doubled down. I mean, no one doubled down on streaming, I don't think, quite the way Disney did. They stopped production of physical media for the most part of their classic films, things like, Blu-ray releases, 4K releases, all that stuff sort of dried up. They put all their eggs, or most of their eggs, in the streaming basket. And now it looks like maybe the costs got out of control. And they talk in this article about, they focus a lot on Marvel, and they look at this. During Phase 4, Marvel Studios released 18 projects. Think of that. Across theatrical and streaming, 4 films and 5 TV shows in 2021. 3 films and 3 TV shows in 2022, plus a few specials. And there were only 11 projects in Phase 3, which ran from 2016 to 2019. So in 2 years, they nearly doubled the output. And these things are not done cheap. Now, if you're wondering, why are we talking about Marvel? Well, we are also talking about Star Wars. The story does detail and say that Star Wars is facing the opposite challenge of Marvel. Marvel, which is gone from the big screen to the small screen. Star Wars has been relatively absent since 2019, and having had false starts with Patty Jenkins' Rogue Squadron, which may never materialize. It's not materializing, folks, I don't think at all. Disney has ramped up its efforts to return the franchise to theaters. Damon Lindelof led a writer's room in July to hash out a story for a feature, and Taika Waititi is still developing his own take on the franchise. I don't think that's happening either. I'm editorializing here. Disney is expected to unveil film plans at Star Wars Celebration. That'd be Star Wars Celebration over in London. On top of season 3 of Mandalorian, shows expected to hit the streaming service this year include Ahsoka, starring Rosario Dawson, and the John Watts-produced Skeleton Crew. Lucasfilm may ramp up, but it will have to abide by the same fiscal discipline as the rest of the company, says a insider. So, Jim, despite the fact that Star Wars is, certainly quite prolific on the streaming platform, the eyes are set on the prize, which is the theatrical, bringing Star Wars back to theaters. But across the board, it's going to have to endure the same kind of budget standards, or in this case, discipline, as they call it, as everyone else.
Right. Yeah, so what is that going to mean? If it means 2 Star Wars series a year instead of 4, as long as it maintains the quality that we're used to, then I say okay. I mean, I feel like the Disney budget was being stretched a little bit when you look at things like Kenobi, which seemed like some of it may appear to have been shot on the cheap a little bit. I know that stagecraft volume is something that's pretty expensive to run and maintain. But still, at the end of the day, it's cheaper to use that than constantly building and destroying sets. So Lucasfilm does have an advantage in that department, at least, where they're employing that technology, and it's largely as a cost-cutting measure. It's just like when George Lucas was developing the virtual sets during the prequel era. It was to keep costs down. The volume should, at the end of the day, keep costs down, and I hope it does. But at the end of the day, the streaming doesn't matter. It's just a fad when you talk about the big picture of cinematic entertainment, which has been going on for over 100 years. And Star Wars has a very honored place in that history. And the Disney company and Bob Iger didn't buy Star Wars for streaming series. That wasn't even a blip on the radar when George and Bob sat down and signed those papers making the deal a fish. It was going to be films every year. Film, possibly approaching the Marvel output of filmmaking, where you would have different stories being told in the Star Wars universe, then all converging on one single big event film like Marvel did with the Avengers. That was the plan from day one with Star Wars. Saga film, standalone film, alternating years. That was the plan. And then they did too much too fast, according to them, in 2018 with the Solo film, riding hot on the heels of The Last Jedi 5 months later. So that made Disney and Lucasfilm reassess the whole situation. And so what did they do? Well, they ran for the hills. They pulled the plug on all Star Wars films. Because conveniently, at the same time, Disney as a company was going to start prioritizing streaming because they were asleep at the wheel for years, watching Netflix take all the glory based on their content that they were licensing to Netflix. Suddenly, the light bulb went on over somebody's head and said, why are we letting Netflix have the lion's share of the marketplace? We should get our piece of the pie. And that started a whole different trend of streaming services popping up left and right. And now I think we finally got to the place where the bubble has begun to burst. A lot of money is being dumped into these franchises so they could create streaming content. And in the Marvel case, at least they're putting stuff out in the theaters, but it seems like that's all Disney is doing, is putting Marvel out into the theaters, nothing else. And so what happens then? You're spitting out a lot of content, you're paying a ton for it, and the quality isn't there. because
you know,
it's too much too fast. I'm not surprised that this is happening, and I've been predicting this for years. The bubble is bursting.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, you talked about the budget and sort of Kenobi looking a little bit cheaper, a little leaner budget. The budget for Kenobi for the whole series was $90 million.
Mm-hmm.
Andor, by contrast, and none of these are, these figures are not. This is all based on insider information. Disney doesn't release these figures generally. Right. Andor, by contrast, had a $15 to $25 million budget per episode. Kenobi, the whole thing, $90 million. Andor, $15 to $25 million.
Yes.
Book of Boba Fett had a $15 million episode or per episode budget.
Substantial.
So Kenobi appears to have the lowest budget of all the series. If these rumors are to be, or these numbers are to be believed, which I think they probably are, and it shows. I think it really does show.
Well, at times, I mean, it looks spectacular, and other times,
yes,
it looks like maybe the pandemic came into play a little bit. What was the total? 90
million. 90 million on Kenobi for the whole first season.
That's a lot of money. 90 million.
It's a lot of money, but so how many episodes did Andor
gives
have?
You about 13 million. About 13 million per episode if you want to break it down. Take 90 million divided by 7.
Yeah. So a couple million less than Book of Boba Fett.
Mm-hmm.
Andor, if we split the difference and we say 20 million, how many episodes did Andor have? Was it 8?
12.
12 episodes?
12.
Yeah, so Andor season 1 had a $240 million budget.
Oh.
Almost 3 times Kenobi.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
and you also have to assume that, Andor had a gigantic cast. So that must have cost
huge
a lot
cast.
Of money to have that
and
cast.
Practical sets, location shooting. There was no volume involved with Andor.
But if you wanted to match up their budgets next to each other, which of course we don't have access to that, but I would look at Kenobi maybe even costing as much as that huge cast for Andor just for Hayden and Ewan McGregor alone. To bring back, especially Ewan, to bring back a guy like him to Star Wars, I'm sure it costs a lot of money. $30 million maybe for the run? That's not unreasonable compared to what he probably makes for feature films. That's probably not unreasonable. Right. So
and they gave him executive. I think they gave him producer credit, maybe executive producer credit or something like that on the show. Yeah. I think he had some oversight on the scripts, maybe.
$30 million. That's my guess for Ewan, and that's a third of the budget, right there.
Third of the budget. Right.
On Ewan.
So when you're watching it and you see, you're watching the show and you go, oh, I can see where they spent the money on this. You're looking at Ewan McGregor.
Yeah.
And look, as a Star Wars fan, no complaints here. I mean, you can't do it without Ewan McGregor. There'd be no point in doing it without him. And then having Hayden was just, the cherry on top of all of it. But it does cut into the budget. Now, getting back to this story, that's not the story. Where's the story? Here it is. Yeah. So getting back to the story where Bob Iger is really getting some fiscal responsibility into these projects. And Jim, you sort of said that, well, maybe it's fewer shows. I would rather it be fewer shows with the same quality than the same number of shows with, no disrespect to you Doctor Who fans, but I don't want my Star Wars to look like something that the BBC made, with Doctor Who. I want it to look like Star Wars. That's my expectation. So I would rather have less, better quality. But it seems like everybody's in the same boat, Jim. It doesn't matter whether it's Star Wars, or Marvel. They're all doing it. We're talking about, we actually mentioned it on the Bad Batch After Show last night. Billions, $5 billion in cuts. 7,000 jobs have been cut. And so I think it would be naive for us to think that Star Wars is not going to be impacted by this. What would be on the chopping block? Or
streaming series
projects that we don't know about?
Yes, streaming series. There'll be a reluctance to throw big money behind multiple streaming series. I fear the opposite's going to happen. They're going to try to stretch the buck to such a degree while still maintaining the volume of content that we're going to notice a serious decline in quality. That's what I fear the most. Or Star Wars will just be made become so lame and pedestrian like so much television. I don't know how acceptable that is for us. So I would rather see like one animated series and 2 live action series a year as opposed to an animated series.
But they gotta feed the beast.
I
for
agree.
These streaming platforms. That's the thing, because otherwise it can be so so what'll happen is when there's a new Star Wars series, whether it be animated or live action, the Star Wars fans will all jump in for a couple of months with their $10, $12, $15, whatever it is, and then they'll dump out, and then the Marvel guys, they'll come in and they'll do a couple of months. That's not what they want, obviously, but it might just be the reality.
But there, and demographics, I don't think they look at it as particular fan bases. They look at it as people who like Star Wars and Marvel. They look at it more like that as opposed to
genre entertainment as opposed to franchise by franchise. Yeah.
So corporate thinking at Disney might lead them to believe that Star Wars fans will be satisfied simply because there's a Marvel series on their streaming service. And so they're satisfying the nerd element of their consumer base. That's how they could look at it. They try to boil it all down. I find it unacceptable as a Star Wars fan, and I'm really happy that this year we're getting 3 live action series and an animated series and a top tier video game in Jedi Fallen Order 2. So those are the things that I think make this year of Star Wars great. And apparently, we'll be hearing the news about the future of Star Wars in the cinema at the beginning of April, at the big whoop-de-doo in London.
Right.
Yeah.
The big whoop-de-doo.
So we'll be
I just
here
want
on
to close
Rebel
this
Force
out
Radio.
and just
go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to close this out and mention that a producer in the industry is saying that this is not just Disney, this is everybody. He says the pullback is coming amid an industry-wide shift in rethinking the best way to achieve profitability in streaming. Adds one producer working on multiple projects around town. Every studio and streamer is being forced to behave fiscally responsibly. Well, so now you're like my household, like Jimmy Mac's household. We all have to act fiscally responsible. Gee, sorry about that. I'm sure the shareholders aren't sad to hear about that. But Jim, at the same time as Bob's talking about all of this restraint, what did we just hear? We heard Frozen 3, Toy Story 5, Zootopia 2. Those were big projects that were announced. So
they're betting on the sure thing.
But they're all big.
The marquee value of those 3 are huge. Now, I hope that Iger has gotten over his habit, and it's a bad habit that really got us into this mess to begin with, of just assuming the IP's name leads to success. We'll dump a bunch of money into it. We have the IP. It's a classic IP people love, Toy Story. But they have to put the mojo into it. They have to make sure that they're not rushing the thing. That's the biggest problem, I think, with this franchise entertainment and the way that it's distributed is all being rushed. It's all being terribly rushed. We have the IP. So that means the next movie is coming out 2 years from June 14th. And who's writing it?
Right,
TBD.
as you've said so
Who's
many
starring
times.
In it? TBD.
Right.
What's
They
the story
put
about?
the date
TBD.
out there. They tell you when it's coming out, and that's it. They tell you nothing else.
Because there is nothing else.
They have no writer. They have no director. Yeah.
So they're announcing something that doesn't exist yet. And that immediately puts all the creatives under the gun. And Hollywood has got to stop doing that. Back in the old days, ideas would be properly developed and fleshed out before they were granted any sort of release date. You know? Nowadays, it's just like, we got the IP. Next movie's coming out in 2 years. Well, let's put together the movie first. Make sure a door doesn't fall on Harrison Ford or something. You know, I mean, things happen. Things happen.
Right.
Let them happen.
Do happen. You know, I was thinking about, DC. I was so excited. Super Bowl and the commercial for the Flash movie. And as a kid of the late 70s and throughout the 80s, the 89 Batman movie was a huge moment, for me as a kid. I turned 13 that summer, and I just could not get enough of Batman 89, and seeing Michael Keaton back as Batman in that trailer for The Flash on Super Bowl Sunday was so great. Here's the problem. I've known about that because of these, release dates and all of this forecasting that they do. I've known about that movie. I've known about Keaton's involvement for such a long time. This movie's coming out. I'm supposed to be excited about it, but at the same time, I know that there's going to be a complete reboot of the whole DCU, the whole DC film universe. That's another thing that happens with these long forecastings and these announcements, is that, as you say, anything can happen. A door can fall on Harrison Ford, or the company can hire James Gunn to completely nuke and pave the whole ball of wax. So I'm going into this and I'm excited about seeing Michael Keaton back as Batman, but at the same time, I know that the whole movie is inconsequential because it's about to be just blown up in the next few months. So that is, I think it's just absolute malpractice with these types of franchises, and I think it just beats up the fans, quite frankly.
Yeah.
And I don't want to see that happen to Star Wars.
Right. We're sick and tired of it. Announce things, give us these things when they're actually going to happen. Now, DC, they really, set the bar way higher when they pulled the plug on the Batgirl movie or Batwoman movie or whatever.
The Batgirl movie.
Batgirl movie. They blew that sucker up while it was still being edited. They had the whole thing in the can. And they blew
my God,
up,
it was it was. They could release it tomorrow. It's
that stuff doesn't
Dunsky.
happen. That stuff doesn't happen. But they they have this liability insurance and stuff, and they get covered by it, and that's all they're looking at. So meanwhile, the fan base is getting screwed with, the creatives are getting screwed with, the cast and crew, everyone, except the precious shareholders. And that's a shame, because I remember when creatives ran Hollywood. To a degree. There's always been the suits. There's always been the executives who don't get it. That's gone on in Hollywood forever.
It has gone on forever. But I think we're closer back to, or we're closer, maybe it's even worse than the movie moguls, the Louis B. Mayers and things like that. I remember reading several George Lucas biographies, and there was a lot made, and Jim, you may remember this better than I do, but there was a lot made about the fact that the day that George walked on to his first studio, the first studio that he had a gig, was actually the last day. Was it Louis B. Mayer? It was one of the big movie moguls. His last day running this studio was happened to be George Lucas's first day, and they used that as being emblematic of how the old studio system that they talked about, that existed, where if you were an actor, you were signed to a particular studio. You didn't make movies for multiple, studios and that sort of thing. They owned you. They owned everything about you, who you married, who you, whatever. And that changed when, the artists, the auteurs, the directors, storytellers like the Spielbergs and the George Lucases and the Coppolas, they showed up on the scene. Now we're at this weird point where the studios are run by these big corporations where the movies are almost just like big budget commercials for other stuff. And this is where I really, really struggle with the current environment of entertainment today, is because it is being disseminated by these big corporations where the films themselves, the entertainment, the content is more of an afterthought because they're a multi-billion-dollar corporation and they've got all kinds of interests and they're making all kinds of consumer products on top of the fact that they happen to own a division that makes movies. And that is really the problem that I have. And I think that's one of the reasons why there's a complete lack of innovation and new storytelling and an over-reliance on the old stuff.
Yeah, some of these corporations, they get in too deep, and the realization finally hits them. They say, "What? Why are we in the film business? What's going on here?" Case in point, right. When the Coca-Cola company owned Columbia Pictures, they realized that at a certain point,
right?
We make soft drinks. Why are we making movies? It just, the realization hit them.
Right.
So
it is. You're right. It's like a pendulum. It starts to swing. And then eventually Coke got out of the business, and I'm hoping that these big corporations get out of the movie business. Quite frankly, get out of the movie business.
Yeah. Well,
and then we'll start to see, I think, a renaissance.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if that'll ever happen, but maybe someday. Maybe someday, Swank.
So what do you think? Cutbacks going to impact Star Wars? At the end of the day, what do you think it'll end up being? Fewer projects or less quality, same number of projects?
I think in the case of Star Wars, it will come down to fewer series. And right now, we're getting 3 live action series this year. But when 2025 rolls around and a Star Wars film is going to be getting prepped to go out into theaters, I don't think we're going to be in a situation like we were in 2019 when The Mandalorian had been running for about a month and a half just prior to the Force, the Skywalker, the Rise, when the Skywalkers,
the Rise of Skywalker,
when they rose, when the Skywalkers rose, right?
Right.
When The Rise of Skywalker came out, The Mandalorian was well underway in season 1 and actually was airing new episodes at the same time The Rise of Skywalker was hitting the theaters. I don't think we'll see that. I think they're going to be much more judicious about the way they balance these releases. So you'll get a spring release and you'll get a fall release of live action Star Wars. Slot your animated series in the summertime. Then save November and December then for major motion picture hype. And
think they're going to hold on to that holiday slot for Star Wars in the theaters?
Slot. As much as I'd like
as
to see
opposed to
Star
the May
Wars,
slot. Yeah.
I would really like to see Star Wars return
Memorial
to
Day weekend.
Memorial Day weekend. I really would. I really, really would. But Christmas has come to mean Star Wars for a whole generation of fans, and even the generations before them. We were watching Star Wars on the USA Network when they would rerun Star Wars on
the marathons
on Christmas Day. I mean, so it's just become sort of synonymous with the holidays, and you can't deny the impact that releasing those sequel films had during the holiday season. All of them ended up in top 15 of all-time films released. So, and The Force Awakens was a runaway hit, and Rogue One performed far better than anyone thought it would. Could it have pulled that off with a May release? I don't know. It depends on what.
It's amazing how those traditions start up. Our buddy David Sparks, Max Sparky, he had this tradition going back to when The Force Awakens came out, and his daughter, they love to wrap presents for the Christmas presents while watching The Force Awakens. That's how much of a impact in his daughter's life Force Awakens coming out at Christmas time made. So it's like synonymous with the holidays and wrapping gifts and all that stuff. So in the same way that summer was our season of Star Wars.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of people had things to say about when we were talking to FJ and We asked him what direction we think the Star Wars film should go in. And while I threw out things like I'd like to see a Darth Vader standalone film or a Mandalorian major motion picture, I think we all agree that there is still some potential left in those sequel characters and that part of the timeline. And a lot of development went into that. Those are characters we're familiar with, love them or hate them. There's a whole generation of kids who grew up with that. They were dressing up as Captain Phasma and Rey for Halloween. They were watching The Force Awakens every year with their mom and dad, getting ready for Christmas. This kind of stuff will eventually come back to the surface in young adulthood as nostalgia. And you cannot underestimate the power of nostalgia.
You cannot. And you mentioned, or you said, love them or hate them, these characters. What's funny about the criticism of the sequels is it's rarely about the characters themselves. It's the utilization of those characters. There was so much love for Finn and Rey and Poe with The Force Awakens, and it was just that they seemed to be underutilized. They didn't quite interact with the legacy characters the way we wanted them to, and with each other the way we wanted them to. So I don't think there's going to be many complaints of somebody saying, "Hey, let's take these characters and let's see what they got," in addition to what they had in the sequels. I don't think anyone's going to be complaining too much about that.
The big three, they seem to have great chemistry amongst the three of them.
Finn,
you feel
Rey,
it coming off
Poe,
the screen.
Yeah.
Whether or not you dislike the things, the developments of their characters and the way the story evolved and its inconsistent, crazy sort of way, that's hard to overlook sometimes. But I mean, really, when you boil it all down, there are a lot of good things you can say about these characters and the actors who played them. And
yes,
I just think maybe a second chance might be good and could also heal some old wounds and fix some wrongs that went down during those years the sequels were coming out.
All right. We got an update on the infamous F the Empire, the F that was almost heard round the world. And this comes by way of Patreon supporter Michael Nip. This was a tip, Jim, that you got about some new information about this moment that we almost had.
Right. The director of that episode is a guy named Benjamin Caron. And he's a British director, and he directed 3 episodes of ANDOR, and most notably that season finale. And he appeared on the show Real Blend, and he was there promoting his new film Sharper, starring Sebastian Stan. And conversation turned toward ANDOR, and specifically the F the Empire edit. And so this is the first time we're getting actual confirmation. We're actually hearing someone talk about it who worked on the show. And Benjamin Caron was the director of the show. And so he lets us know that this was coming from Tony Gilroy himself. This was a page of the script. And he tells you a little information about how that script was actually realized on set. So here's Benjamin.
Right from the very beginning, he's like, we're going to do this. We're going to get away with this. I mean, Disney have said no, but there's no way. I am not letting them get away with this. And I was like, all right, okay, we're going to do it. And then, so all right, somewhere out there is a recording.
Oh, so you guys shot it?
Hell yeah. I was like, Fiona Shaw. Yeah, I mean, Fiona Shaw. That was like the first thing that came out of her mouth, when we were shooting that. And then they were like, then the producer was like, okay, you need to get a safety. I'm like, oh, come on. They were like, you need a safety. In my head, when I see that, I hear the Empire, not fight the Empire.
Okay, so they got a safety.
Yeah.
Now, was that ADR? Or do you think that was actually the physical performance? Because a lot of people look at that video clip and think that they're seeing her mouth a word that we don't hear.
Right. I got that impression myself, that it was strictly an ADR thing. So maybe that's where the safety was recorded. But I don't know. I don't know. I just find it fascinating to hear the actual director say, yeah, it was there, and yeah, we shot the thing. To be a fly on the wall for some of those meetings, as Tony Gilroy was sitting there with Lucasfilm brass.
We're going to do it. It sounds like, according to Benjamin, that Gilroy was real confident that they were going to make this happen.
Well, he was real confident that they were going to go for it.
Yeah, right.
And maybe there might have been some sneaky stuff being pulled. So, that kind of confidence leads me to believe that on the set, when they shot the hologram of Marva, she only delivered the F-bomb version. It was an ADR when they fixed it.
Let's get the safety.
That's what I believe. But, those are the frustrations these guys have. I always say there's a lot of artists working on franchise content, but franchise content itself isn't necessarily art because there are just too many voices at the table, too many filters you have to go through, too much permission. True artwork flows from an individual or a group of people with a single-minded objective. Franchise entertainment, once we get it, it contains art, but in itself, it is not art.
And it's probably why when we look at Star Wars as a whole, that first film really sticks out because that is probably Star Wars in its. You could maybe talk about the prequels too, but as far as the most pure form of art that has ever come out of Star Wars or that has ever been part of Star Wars might actually be that first film. And I bring up the prequels because, yes, George obviously had deals with 20th Century Fox to distribute the films, but those films were very much his. I mean, you watch the behind the scenes, particularly with that first one. I may have gone too far. I mean, there was no studio execs over his shoulders.
Oh, no.
Telling him what to do on those. So there is a purity about Lucas Star Wars.
Right. I was being specific in my comments about what's going on today with franchise entertainment.
Today, yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
No,
Kind of bouncing off the conversation we were having about that report in the Hollywood Reporter that we were just talking about. I'm sort of fueled by that.
For sure.
I think the George Lucas things can qualify as art, and I will even push back on you a little bit and say the first film definitely, in George's mind, that didn't represent his true vision. So it's hard to say. I mean, there was plenty of
because of the technology limitations
and the lack of money. The studio wasn't,
and the budget.
The studio wasn't giving George what he needed to complete his artwork. So George always.
All right. So let me ask you, what do you think is the purest form of Lucas Star Wars?
I would say the prequels, because the buck stopped there with. He was at the height of his power at that point.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't answer to anyone, not a single person. He wrote the 3 films.
Mm-hmm.
He had a little assistance on Sith, and maybe even Attack of the Clones too. I can't remember.
Carrie was rumored to have helped him with the Attack of the Clones script,
but those were his choices. George said, "I need my stuff punched up a little bit, so I'm going to bring in a collaborator." Okay, that's still working within the realms of proper artwork. 2 people could work on the same piece, no problem.
Right,
it's when all the corporate interference comes in, being told you can't do this, you have to do that. That becomes problematic, I think, if you're going to qualify artwork. And in the first film, George was restricted by lack of resources and money and time. By the time he got to the prequels, he was in charge of all of that. And he could make or break release dates according to his desires. And he did. The original The Phantom Menace they were targeting maybe 97 or 98 for that originally when they first started developing it. George wanted the trilogy to walk us into the new millennium, which it did, just barely. He got it done in 99.
Right.
So
Right.
But to me, that still is probably as pure as it gets because everyone was on his bankroll. His producer worked directly to him. His producer, that's the other thing too, is a lot of times on films, producers hire the director. Right. Not in the case of Star Wars. George hired his own producers for that. That's how you know that a lot of the control was strictly, purely his.
Yeah.
Hey guys, it's Uncle George. Just sitting here counting my money. Anyway, just want to say thanks for the shout out on your little radio show, and may the force be with you.
Rebel Force Radio. Rebel Force Radio. Rebel Force Radio.
Star Wars Cantina.
Where are you going, Master?
For a drink.
Sorry about the mess.
You will never find the more wretched hive of scum and villainy. We must be cautious.
All right, as promised, joining us in the Cantina, Star Wars artist. Plus, he's a writer, he's a filmmaker, and we haven't seen him in a heck of a long time. Our old buddy Matt Busch joining us. Welcome, Matt.
What's up? So glad to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, it's great to see you. It has been a long time. I did want to mention that, when we were just starting out in this podcast thing, especially me, Mac brought all the celebrity and all the pedigree of how to deal with celebrities. But when I was just starting out with this stuff, the nicest people on the planet to us when they saw us coming with our microphones were the Star Wars artists. And you were one of those. Always took time out to talk to us and always treated us like the professional media outlet we wanted to be. But that always meant a lot to me. So guys like you and Randy Martinez and a whole host of others, I can't name them all, that were always so great to us over the years. So I just wanted to let you know how much I appreciate that 15 years later.
Likewise. And for us artists, sometimes we feel like we're on the bottom of the totem pole of the whole chain of, guests at like a Star Wars show. So any kind of press or word of mouth that we can get is just super, super appreciated.
Well, just so you know, Matt, podcasters are way beneath artists on that totem pole. So I'll tell you right now. I mean, we're the ones who are. We're the ones who are honored here. We're the ones who are lucky.
And you can tell when you go to a Star Wars celebration by the size of the areas. You got, of course, all the big celebs. They got their big tents, their big areas. Then you got, like the artist alley and that sort of thing. And then if you're lucky, you might have a closet or some room that they had something else that canceled, and that's where they stick the podcasters in. So,
right.
Yeah, Mac's absolutely right.
No, usually what they offer us at the convention center is so pathetically small, we have to go and rent our own venues. It's a pain in the ass, but podcasters definitely bottom of the barrel. So you guys are a much more highly regarded species of Star Wars contributor. So you got that going for you.
Okay.
So Matt, you go back a long time with Star Wars, obviously, and we refer to you as a Star Wars artist. It's how we came to know you. Do you still like to wear that moniker, Star Wars artist, Star Wars fan? A lot has changed in Star Wars since we last spoke.
Yeah, a lot. Gosh, so much has changed, but absolutely, it's still such an honor to be a part of the community. And it's wild. I never would have dreamed as a kid that I would have been doing official Star Wars art, and I've been doing it for 29 years now, which is bananas.
That's amazing. Yeah. Do you remember what was the first project you undertook for Star Wars?
Yeah, it's actually a funny story. So I was in a Barnes and Noble when it was a brand new like superstore. Mm-hmm. And when it was a bookstore that had couches, you could like sit down and just read books, and like they wouldn't tell you to leave, you buy it or leave. So there was this new Star Wars role-playing game book that was called the Star Wars Adventure Journal. And in the back, it said that they were looking for published writers. Now, an artist was what I was really looking to be at the time, but I also had an interest in writing, but I wasn't really published, but I had some self-published comic books and even like Star Wars fanzines that I had made that I would just like hand deliver to local comic book shops. And so I sent in my resume. I didn't lie on my resume, but I just kind of worded it carefully so it kind of almost sounded like I was published. And I got the green light to submit a story. And so I contacted them and I said, hey, would it be cool if I also submitted the artwork? And they were like, listen, let's not get crazy here. We already have a team of official, Lucasfilm approved Star Wars artists. So, if you want to do some sketches, like something that could show them kind of what you're thinking about, that's okay. But really, we're just looking for writers. So I was like, okay. So I wrote the best story I could. I did the best artwork that I could. And they got back with me pretty quickly, and they said, listen, we're not interested in your story at all. But in the letter, it said, your artwork is actually pretty good. If something, opens up, we'll give you a call. And I figured, oh, that was really nice of them. I'm sure I'll never hear from them again. The very next day, they called me, and they said, listen, one of our artists flaked out. We need 5 black and white spot illustrations tomorrow. Can you do it? And I was like, absolutely. And it was really funny because when the first book came out, I was so excited. I was showing all my friends. Now, mind you, these are small spot black and white illustrations, like not even a quarter of a page, like real small. And I remember my friends would flip through the book and they'd say, oh, did you draw the Millennium Falcon? And I'd say, no, keep trying. Oh, did you draw, Darth Vader? No, keep turning the page. And then they'd get to a page where there was a small little black and white spot illustration of either like a Twi'lek, like a random Twi'lek, or like a rebel commando that no one's ever heard of. And I'd be like, you see that? I drew that. And they'd be like, wow. And they'd turn the page. Oh, did you draw Boba Fett? No. But
man,
that's where it started.
What book was that? Which book was that specifically?
That would have been, it's the Star Wars Adventure Journal. I believe it was number 4. And that was back in 1994.
Wow. The Star Wars Adventure Journal. Yeah, I'm not familiar with that one.
Yeah, it was like short stories. Like Timothy Zahn wrote some short stories for that, and a bunch of the other authors at that time that were writing, expanded universe novels.
Yeah.
So it was pretty cool. I mean, back when there wasn't much Star Wars, so like anything Star Wars was, the holy grail. I mean, I even bought Bendems when they came.
Oh, yeah.
Holy cow. Bendems. This interview's over. This guy has no standards.
Well, I don't know. We always used to be really impressed by Bendems because as far as action figures go, they have unlimited articulation.
Right. You can't count the points of articulation. If you ever have a trouble falling asleep, just count the points of articulation on a Star Wars Bendem.
Yeah.
Put you right out.
Be there all night.
It goes on forever.
Tying yourself in pretzels.
So you got this. So how did you go from doing these little illustrations? I mean, your friends might not have been overly impressed, but obviously you impressed somebody because it moved on to bigger things.
I always tried to be really good with deadlines. I always tried to do my best work. So the next time I got to do 7 illustrations, and I think 2 of them were half-page illustrations inside the book, which was, that was a big deal from what I did before. So they kept giving me a little more, and then I got to do full color, and then I got to do full page, and eventually I got to do covers. And at one point, there was an editor at Bantam Doubleday Dell, I think was the publishing house at the time. But I got to do the cover for Tales from the Empire, and that became a New York Times bestseller with Boba Fett on the cover. And so that was huge. And a lot of it, a lot of these editors are friends with each other, and they're kind of, networking at, the Star Wars shows and everything. So once you get in with one of the licensees, you kind of just spider web your way into getting to know everyone at Lucasfilm, and especially back then, it was a pretty awesome, tight knit family.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, we're looking at the cover right here for those that are watching the show. And so for those friends that were like, "Oh, did you do Boba Fett?" Now you can say, "Yeah, I did Boba Fett. Did Boba Fett? Did the Slave One?"
Yeah, and it was funny. I remember at the very first Star Wars celebration that was in Denver, someone came up to me and they showed me a tattoo that they had. And I have a tattoo of Darth Vader that I've had since I was 18, but it was of Boba Fett, and it was actually of the cover that I illustrated. And I didn't realize that. I just looked at it really quick, and I just saw Boba Fett. So I was like, "Yeah, that's cool." And they were like, "No, but look." And I was like, "Yeah, Boba Fett. I have Darth Vader. Yeah, it's cool." And then I did a double take, and I was like, "Oh my gosh!" And it was the first time I saw my work that someone had done as a tattoo for life. So,
well, that's got to be
it was just great.
Really got to be one of the highest compliments when somebody wants, not just Darth Vader or Boba Fett, but your version. That's awesome.
That is great.
Yeah, crazy.
Matt, you went on then to just do so many pieces of Star Wars artwork and illustration. What would you say is the pinnacle achievement of your Star Wars career?
Gosh, I would say off the top of my head, illustrating the Style D one sheet for Revenge of the Sith. The original circus poster was illustrated by Drew Struzan and Charles White III. So to be asked to illustrate that was just a huge dream come true. I got to work closely with Pete Vilmer at Lucasfilm, who was the art director on that poster, and Paul Michael Caine, who did the typography. And that was just wild, just so cool. Mm-hmm. And at the time, I was doing a lot of illustrations for Star Wars Insider magazine, and it was really cool. It was just a great time, and exciting with the prequels and all of that. It was just awesome.
It's one of the greatest all-time Star Wars posters, the original from Drew Struzan, and what you did to bring it up to date for the prequels was just so natural and fitting, and it just feels right looking at it. Sometimes when you see things that are tributes or homages to the original, it lacks something. But this almost looks like Drew handed the paintbrush to you right after he finished the original, and he said, "Now let's see yours." And it's almost like you guys were in the same room. There's just an energy about it. And something interesting about the original, the very original draft that Drew did of his circus poster for the original Star Wars, that hangs up in Skywalker Ranch in the main house. It's when you open the door to go downstairs to the editing suites, you see it there on the wall in the stairwell. I'm not supposed to know this, but somehow I do.
Yeah, I was going to say I've never been downstairs.
Oh, nobody's supposed to be down there. What's going on? How do I know? That's crazy. But
whoops, I took a wrong. I thought the bathroom was over here.
Yeah, right. I could have sworn I heard a flush coming from this way. But I mean, just to sort of underline the importance of the piece, because it's not like when you walk around the main house at Skywalker Ranch, you're not seeing Star Wars artwork everywhere in that place. It's just very specific places, and this one is kind of a little hidden treasure in there that I don't think too many people who walk into the main house get to lay eyes on it. So for you to be able to do that, have you ever spoke to Drew about his posters or his artwork? Was he an influence of yours?
Yeah. Oh gosh, huge influence. And yeah, I've talked to him many times. I never talked to him specifically about this poster. But yeah, in fact, at the very first Star Wars celebration, back then there was only 3 artists exhibiting, and I was one of them, and Drew Struzan was one of them, and we were neighbors next door. So that was the first time I got to meet him, and I've gotten to know him really well over the years. I was actually really nervous at first because my style, when I kind of broke in doing a lot of Star Wars art, a lot of the licensees, because they knew I could kind of do Drew Struzan's style, I would get hired to kind of mimic his style, they would ask me to make my signature a little bit smaller so people wouldn't really know that it wasn't a Drew Struzan piece. So I was really nervous. I was really nervous when I was nervous when I met him at first because I thought he'd be upset that I was perhaps taking some of his work. He was just the nicest person and just really open and honest with me. He had great advice just in general for my career that I took to heart that actually helped a lot. And just a really selfless person. He's just awesome.
Yeah.
Drew's great.
What about somebody like Ralph McQuarrie? What kind of influence does he have on you as an artist?
Gosh, so much. As a kid, definitely seeing those paintings. And as a kid, when I was a young kid, I didn't even really realize the idea of what those Ralph McQuarrie paintings were, because you would see them like on the back of the official collector's edition. I just thought they were cool Star Wars paintings. I didn't really realize that those were the concepts that were first illustrated before they created any of that, before they built the sets. So kind of growing up and slowly learning, I was already a fan as a kid, but then realizing that was just out of his imagination. Like what? So, a lot of the work that I do is primarily for licensing and publishing, where I get to take a film that's already made, and my job is just to take the images from it and make it look pretty and kind of add some pizzazz here and there, which is cool. But like, I always have mad respect for concept artists that can just create out of their own head and just bring things to life. It's just awesome. Or things like that, like the matte paintings, with the where they would film looking through glass, the footage, just amazing. And those visual effects still hold up so good today.
Matt, one of the things that I've grown to sort of associate you with is helping out younger artists. And I mean, like little artists. I mean, you were always there at conventions, and I don't know if you just drew the short straw or if this is something you signed up to do, but you would be doing workshops for kids, how to draw Star Wars characters. Was that your idea and a passion of yours, or did you just, all the names get thrown in the hat and like, you've got kitty duty today? It's Star Wars Celebration.
You know what? It's something I've always been passionate about. When I was a kid, there was no like books or resources for drawing Star Wars. So I would just take comic books and kind of, try to mimic that. So early in my career, I hit up when Star Wars Kids magazine was a thing. I started doing the monthly, it wasn't called You Can Draw Star Wars, but the How to Draw Star Wars segments I did for Star Wars Kids magazine.
Yep.
And then I pitched for years to do a How to Draw Star Wars book to all the licensees. No one thought anyone would be interested in an entire book on how to draw Star Wars. So I did this for years, kind of gave up on it. And then a couple years later, was contacted by Lucasfilm, and they said, hey, we're doing this How to Draw Star Wars book. Any chance you might be interested in
Matt, we have this great idea. How to Draw Star Wars book.
That is exactly how it went. I mean, I had like sample chapters. I already had all this stuff together, but then they came back with it. So that was a huge, another milestone that was just awesome in my career, was doing the working with Tom Hodges and Bonnie Burton, and I did over 300 illustrations for the book, and then I did 24 episodes that were on StarWars.com, and back then MySpace TV, and obviously YouTube, and they were even collected onto limited edition DVDs as well. So
I remember seeing that. In fact, I think you were nice enough to send us those back in the day. I believe I've got those DVDs.
I know I have mine. It was huge with my kids in the house, the book and the DVD, just huge with them when they were kids.
Well, it made everyone feel that, that they can do it. Now, I usually got frustrated and just traced the final one. It took me having an artist's daughter to learn how everything starts with circles and then cross, and she's shown me all of that stuff. But no, I always got impatient. Just skip to the last step. but they were, of course, they were great. And that's, again, when you give back to the younger kids, because as you mentioned, Drew Struzan, a big, not just influence, but somebody you obviously got to know and had a lot of guidance from. It's very important. And, you said something earlier, and I just want to underscore this for our younger listeners. You said, I made my deadlines and I did my best work. And I can't tell you how rare that is these days. And, it's a really important lesson, though, because you were in a very competitive field, artists, and sometimes, in your case, you have mad talent, but it's the ones that get the job done consistently and are reliable and all of that get the work. And you strike me as that kind of artist.
Yeah. Well, I think the one thing, and I'm grateful that I have that built in me, but it's a thing that most artists have. A stereotype is that artists are, I wouldn't say lazy, but they procrastinate. So, they're filled with ideas and they have all these things they want to do. But when it comes down to actually starting a new project or starting a new painting, it's like, oh man, Nintendo's calling. I'm just going to go play Nintendo for a little bit. I'll get to that later,
Right.
And and especially in today's day and age with with phones and Instagram, like everything's
the
calling our
distractions
name.
for artists are just, especially when you're working on an iPad or on a computer or something, when it was a sketch pad, maybe the distractions were lessened, but these days, I can just imagine with the digital.
Oh, you have to turn notifications off, because if you're drawing and then there's constantly like, hey, what are you doing? What's going on? Just like, oh my gosh, it takes you right out of the zone. So if you can, that's a huge thing. If you can, and it's actually something, if you can do it, it'll definitely today set you apart from everyone else, just being really good at deadlines. And when the studios or the publishers know you're someone that they can count on, that if they contact you and you agree to do the job, that you're going to get it done on time, you're going to be good at making changes, and you're going to give your best work, that's going to get you the gigs over and over.
I was flipping through here and I just had to stop on this one because we, last week, we had a couple who had written a book on the history of the Star Wars radio dramas. And Jimmy had brought up this particular version. And I don't remember I didn't remember at all when he was talking about, and it came with a Topps card. I think it was the last time the radio dramas were released. And this is yours, right? This is your cover.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That's very cool.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun to do. That was through Highbridge Audio. And it came with a card. And this was actually, Topps did a trading card set that was aligned with this that came out at the same time. And it was really interesting because the cards, and there was about, on that set, I think there was 10 different artists that each got to do 10 cards. But the thing that was interesting about it is the cards tell the story of Star Wars, but not from the films, from the radio dramas. So there's all of these extra, the material with Biggs, and there's a scene in the beginning with Darth Vader and Princess Leia, and just a lot of really cool stuff. But it was all illustrated, and it was all kind of released at the same time. It was one big project. It was. Really
I hope you still have yours, because I hear they go for a ton on eBay.
Oh, those CDs?
Yeah, the Topps version. Yeah. So if you got them, hold on to them.
Cha-ching, cha-ching. Hey, Matt, so obviously you're forged from the original generation of Star Wars fans, the original trilogy generation, and Star Wars has grown so much, and so much has been added to the mythology over the years. What inspires you from current modern Star Wars, and what really appeals to you as a fan?
Gosh, I would say with the new material today, I really like some of the new worlds that we're getting to visit, and some of the territory where it's just really good storytelling. So obviously Mandalorian, especially the first season, man, those first 3 episodes were just some of the best Star Wars ever. And then Andor was a show, for whatever reason, I just wasn't interested in it before seeing it, because already Rogue One is a prequel, which to me, prequels are just, I feel like, not that I don't like the prequels, but just in general, prequels are always going back to a point where all of the urgency isn't there. So which characters already are going to make it and which characters probably are expendable, So Rogue One is already a prequel. Andor is a prequel of a prequel. So I was just like, man, no one's asking for this. I just don't think this is going to go over well. And boy, was I wrong. What a fantastic show. And just getting into just another side of the universe that we've never seen before. It's awesome.
Well, Matt, so obviously you have inspiration from Star Wars, the things you like, the things you don't like, as a storyteller, in addition to being an artist. And it seems like that a lot of that has been poured into one of your latest projects, which is the world of ALADDIN 3477. So I was flipping through the materials. I was on the website, and this looks like a franchise that's been in existence for years. I'm like, why? How have I not, heard of this? But it's relatively new, is it not?
Yeah. Well, I've been working on it for the last 13 years. This has kind of been my big project that I've been working on, mostly in secret. I've been sharing little bits here and there, and at the Star Wars celebrations, I've been sharing some sneak peeks. But I knew that the only way that this would really work is if I kind of kept quiet about it and then just had a big splash, which I kind of unveiled in January. And it's just been awesome. This is kind of, my dream wasn't just to work for George Lucas. It was to become George Lucas. And I don't mean like the business mogul. And I have no delusions. This is not, the next Star Wars or anything like that. But it's been a passion of mine to have my own sci-fi epic trilogy. And it's obviously very Star Wars inspired, but it also feels like Indiana Jones. I take influence from all the things, especially when I was a kid, growing up in the Spielberg era, like we have. It's just been a riot to put all this together. And especially now that I'm able to start sharing it with everyone, it's just been awesome. The feedback. It's actually kind of funny because in the last 13 years, if I ever shared even like a quick sketch of Boba Fett on a napkin, I would get like 700 likes in a half hour. But if I ever shared my passion project that I was putting my blood, sweat, and tears into, and to be fair, I wasn't sharing a lot, but I would share this is a look at the costume from one of the characters. In 2 days, I would have 2 likes.
Oh.
It was like, oh my gosh, it was cricket. Because when I announced it, no one was interested. I mean, there wasn't anyone that was like, gosh, you know what I want to see Matt Busch do? I want to see him make his own movies about Aladdin. Yes, no one really wanted that. I get it. But I had a vision, and it was just kind of hard to show that at first. But now that I've been able to share a pretty good look at it, it's just been awesome seeing the feedback and that people are excited about it. It's just been fantastic. I'm just so grateful.
Well, we're showing the trailer, which you can see. At least we found it on YouTube, and I know it's available other places as well. The website. ALADDIN3477.com. But is the goal for this to really be a true sort of multimedia sort of, for lack of a better word, franchise, I guess we could call it. That's the term.
Yeah.
That's going to encompass books and comics and a film and all of that. What's the rollout?
Yeah,
Merchandise.
That is definitely the plan.
Merchandising.
That's right. I've already got some toys that are being manufactured through the Kickstarter. There's 2 books that are going to come out this year. The first film is going to come out this year. It doesn't have a distributor yet. I've got some interest, but I'm kind of waiting until the Kickstarter is over to kind of play my cards with that. But definitely before the year is over, the first film will be released in some capacity. I'm hoping there'll be perhaps a mini theatrical run, but we'll see. We'll see what sticks. I'm just super excited about it, and wherever it lands. And the cool thing is, I think it's something that's going to grow, however big or however small it becomes this year. I'm so proud of the first film, but the second film is probably my favorite of the trilogy, and then the third film is like the craziest, like biggest, most action, and they're neat too because right now, like the trailer you're looking at is mostly what you see in the first half of the first film. So no one has even seen anything from the second film, which has new characters, new robots, new starships, new sets. There's so much more to this that I'm just so happy that if people are excited about this, there's so much more. And
it looks
it's
awesome,
real exciting,
man. Can you give us just quick kind of Reader's Digest version of the basic plot and characters so people have a handle of?
Give us the elevator pitch.
Sure.
If you're on board an elevator with a film executive and you have about 30 seconds to tell them, well, don't rush that much, but
awesome. So it is the story of Aladdin, essentially, but it's set 1,500 years in the future, and it's got robots, starships. It's got it's based on the original source material, so it's not like the Disney version. There isn't singing or dancing, but it's just got really cool characters. It's expanded big time, so it is roughly the story of Aladdin, but there's twists and turns you won't see coming. Just bigger storylines. I think a little bit more thought-provoking. Our Jinn or our genie isn't like a crazy. He doesn't come out and do impressions, and he doesn't come out in a blue puff of smoke, and or anything like that. But he's almost more of an Obi-Wan Kenobi figure, where just a little bit more profound. And it's I think Star Wars fans would dig it. I think Aladdin fans would dig it. Indiana Jones fans, it's definitely bred from the Spielberg Lucas era that we grew up with.
Yeah, you get obvious vibes of that just by looking at the footage we've seen, and it looks spectacular, man. I've noted you talking about it over the years, but now seeing the footage, it's like, wow. When did you start shooting?
We started filming in 2014. That was 9 years ago.
Holy cow.
For a couple years before that, I was writing, I was building little miniatures of starships, and I was also traveling the world. So a lot of the background plates that you see are, in fact, in India, in Cambodia, in Hong Kong, all kinds of places.
And tell us about the Kickstarter.
So the Kickstarter, there's about 2 weeks left for that. And the Kickstarter is really cool because it's kind of set up in a way where you get swag boxes, and you can do the first tier for just the first swag box, which comes out this spring. And the first swag box already has like a mini block figure. It has the book, which is the official collector's edition, which is inspired by, for any Star Wars fans that have like the Empire Strikes Back official collector's edition, or there's actually a Star Wars one as well, and the one from Return of the Jedi, definitely inspired by those. Those come in the first swag box, and then there's actually 4 swag boxes that come throughout the year, and it's really cool. The fourth one, so if you get the fourth one, you actually get all 4 swag boxes, but the fourth one comes with the Blu-ray in December. So that's where you get to see the film. That also comes with the Art of book, which is a hardcover coffee table art book, and it's the exact same size as if you have any of the Star Wars art books or any of the Disney art books or Pixar art books, it's the same format as those. So if you've got those on your shelf, it'll fit in right next to those. And it's just a really fun Kickstarter with a lot of really cool rewards. And there's different price points to get involved. And it's cool because if you're getting all 4 swag boxes, one is shipping in the spring, one is coming in the summer, one comes in the fall, and the last one comes in December. So it's really neat. It's not a thing where it's going to keep charging your credit card. It doesn't charge your credit card until the Kickstarter is over, which is the end of the day on March 3rd. And but it's not a reoccurring thing where like it's a subscription you have to turn off or anything like that. And I think it's one of the, I mean, obviously I think it's one of the coolest Kickstarters ever, but there really is some awesome rewards included in there.
No, it's great. You got a lot to be proud of. Congratulations. Any plans for a red carpet premiere?
Gosh. Well, there is a reward that's included in there where you can see the film before anyone else with me in my own home theater, which has, the life-size R2-D2 and C-3PO and stuff. That's actually one of the add-ons that you can get. But there will definitely be a premiere of sorts here in the Detroit area, and there may be one in Los Angeles as well. And a lot of that is just to be determined with the distributor once that gets locked. But there will probably be a lot more information on that coming soon.
It's so great to see new stories, and here we are, we dedicate our lives to covering this incredible franchise. But it's also nice to see new stuff coming out. And I know it's challenging, and many people don't want to take the risk. It's so much easier just to go with the tried and the true. Having done this, Matt, or having, continuing to do this, do you, does that make sense to you why it's so rare for original stories and, all this world building to take place outside of what we know?
I think what helped me is I really did this not because I thought it would be successful. I didn't do this because I thought it'd be rich or anything like that. I did this knowing full well that the only people interested might be like me, my family, and the people that worked on it. It could totally just blow over and no one would be interested. And especially after seeing the response over the years with how many likes I was getting, I was just like, oh man. But I really approached it like, you know what? I'm doing this for myself, even if it's just something I'm going to be proud of. I'm going to it's in my blood as an artist. I have to do this thing. And then for anyone that likes it, even if it's just, 12 people, then hey, it's 12 people that like it. So to see the response now is just awesome, and it makes it just makes it that much more gratifying. But I would say for anyone else that has an idea, make it fun, make the process fun, do it for yourself. And I think anytime you put that much love and care into something, usually it does well anyway. Chances are if you love something that much, eventually it'll find an audience, and other people probably are going to like it too.
Words of wisdom.
Indeed. Hey, speaking of wisdom, Matt, you go back a long time with us, so long that I don't think we have ever asked you the Yoda questionnaire.
Oh, geez.
Ring any bells?
No, definitely not.
Okay. All right. Well, because we only do it for very special. We don't just let any guest take Yoda's questionnaire. It's very serious because the questions come from the Jedi Master himself. He sent them to us via fax from Dagobah. The technology hasn't quite evolved there.
He's not online.
So
he's Yoda. Why does he have to be online? He can read your mind from planets away. So
that's true. I don't even know that he needs the fax machine. But, for us non-midichlorian folk, that's how he gets the message to us. And it even has a very, very snazzy theme song by the great Richard Cheese.
The Yoda questionnaire.
That's right. Thank you, Richard Cheese. So are you ready, Matt? I mean, this is there are no wrong answers, but there are answers that are more right than others.
Okay.
Okay, that makes sense.
They may look simple on the outside, but on the inside, they could be some of the most complex, revealing questions you're ever asked as far as being a Star Wars fan.
And it's not Star Wars trivia, just so we know. We're not going to be asking you the name of the third rebel and the Battle of Hoth that stood next to the Tauntaun, anything like that. All right. Are you ready?
That was Major Breeback, by the way. Major Breeback is who Swank is talking about. Continue.
Nice.
Matt, what is your favorite Star Wars line? A line of dialogue that maybe you live by. Maybe you have a poster or something of it in your studio. Your favorite Star Wars.
I would say luminous beings are we.
Ooh, nice one. Nice one.
That's a real good one.
And
luminous beings
all right.
are we.
So how does that appeal to you? Because as a kid, I didn't get it. Yeah, I didn't get it. But, as I got older, I was like, well, Yoda's talking about our souls, our spirits, the light within us all, But do you think he really means like you strip away everything, we're just a bunch of light bulbs? I mean, what is he trying to say there?
Gosh, I don't know. There's so many different metaphysical ways that you can kind of look at that. And I think that line has meant different things to me at different times in my life. I also, as a kid, that went way over my head. I didn't know what the word luminous was. I thought it meant light, but I was like, "What? That doesn't make sense."
Right.
We're not made out of light.
Yeah.
I just think, I guess to me, I just think that we are so much more than, with science, every time we learn something new, what we're really learning is that there is so much we don't know. There is so much more in us, around us. There's so much more here that we don't know or see or experience. And, you can get into all the weird, like multi-dimensions that, that exist within our own realm, but we can't see them, or whatever. There's just so much that you can kind of get into, but it's, I think one of the cool things about Yoda is a lot of what he said, there were things as a kid that I understood and was like, whoa, that's deep. And then the older I got, there were more lines that just made more and more sense. And classic Yoda is the gift that keeps on giving.
Oh, classic Yoda dialogue is the best. I'll tell you what comes to a close second are those Clone Wars writers. They were writing some great stuff for Yoda over the years, and that first episode that I remember seeing after the film, the ambush, where Yoda is hanging out on the planet with these clone troopers, there's some really great stuff in there, really good stuff. Okay, Matt, we that was sort of a light side question. We celebrate all sides of the living force here on Rebel Force Radio. We're going to go to the dark side and ask you, what is your least favorite Star Wars line? George Lucas himself wore a T-shirt that had a critic's review of Star Wars, and it said, bad dialogue, and, it's a whole description of the film. So it's not known necessarily for its great dialogue, though we just talked about how good the Yoda stuff is. Do you have a least favorite Star Wars line?
Gosh, just off the top of my head, my least favorite would be, there was a clip that was just unveiled for Mandalorian Season 3, where
this is a fresh one.
It's very fresh.
Least favorite Star Wars line.
And the dialogue that Din Djarin gave, just explaining exactly what he was doing and what he had gone through, was just so, and I'm sure it's out of context, maybe, but it just for someone that usually doesn't speak a lot, boy, that was a lot of information to bring everyone up to speed. Like, what? So that was, to me, that was in recent memory. That was,
it all started 3 years ago.
I thought it didn't fit very well, but
it started when I signed up for Disney Plus. I downloaded the app, then I signed up for the service. The next thing I knew, my heart was stolen by a child. The child, Grogu or Baby Yoda, whatever you want to call him. I'm the Mandalorian.
Dong dong.
Watch Season 3.
All right.
You know,
yes.
I was going to ask you guys how you guys feel. You know, growing up with Star Wars, we were so obsessed with it that I never really knew as a kid that how bad the dialogue was. I just thought it was amazing. So growing up, I can kind of understand where the actors might have been like, what's this planet called and where are we? What is this alien? I could see where that would be strange, but I don't know. Was the dialogue? I mean, I guess I don't know.
I don't think the dialogue in the original films, particularly Jedi has a few clunkers, but Star Wars and Empire, I think, especially Empire, I think they're damn near perfect. I wouldn't change a word of either one of those films, to be honest. And I think the actors do a really great job. We know what struggles they had, particularly Harrison Ford. He wasn't shy about it. But damn, if he doesn't sound like it's his, first language, it sounds great. It sounds great.
Yeah.
And the prequels, okay, we can talk. I'm open to discussion. But the first two films I have absolutely zero complaints on. But that's that's the rose tinted glasses of a kid. Let's talk about character though. Who or what? We have to be inclusive here. Who or what is your favorite Star Wars character?
Gosh, that probably changes over time too. When I was
Jimmy
a kid,
Max changes every day.
Every day. Somebody different
every day. He has a different one. Yeah. Right. So who is it today, Matt?
And Baru.
Gosh. I really liked Din Djarin. Today I like Din Djarin a lot. As a kid, it was R2-D2 for sure.
R2. And you see some influences with R2 and the droid in Aladdin. There's some similarities.
Yeah.
Well, the droid from Aladdin, he has a boombox for a head, but that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. No, for sure. He's R2-D2, but also he floats around. So there's a little bit of Vincent from the Black Hole. Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
Then, and he's kind of fidgety. So that's a little bit of Twiggy from Buck Rogers.
Oh, yeah.
But the funny thing about this is always, I kind of created Fidgy back when I was in college, and he was always, I wanted it to have white armor like R2-D2, but I didn't want it to have blue stripes because that would be ripping off R2-D2. And I didn't want it to have red because that would look like R5-D4. So on purpose, he was always orange accents on this kind of off-white armor. And we were 2.5 years into filming when it was probably 6 months maybe before The Force Awakens came out, maybe 9 months. And the first time I saw BB-8 art, I was just like, no, it's an adorable robot that's white with orange because I knew it was going to be years before anyone saw Fidgy, and I was like, everyone's going to think we copied off, like we're trying to be BB-8. Like, oh no. And I do love BB-8. Don't get me wrong, but actually, it was just great minds think alike. How do we make it look like R2-D2 but not R2-D2?
Yeah, right. You guys were
thinking there.
Both trying to crack a similar code. It sounds like the Aladdin crew and the Force Awakens crew.
Yeah, it's not. It's not an easy thing. Though I do love. Mac pointed out the boombox. I didn't notice that when I first watched. I really didn't. And then you see it and you're like, wow, this is that whole used universe kind of vibe, which is awesome. It's not a lot of, it's not that glitzy, look at the future.
Is that an aesthetic choice or is that actually a functioning boombox? Does Fidgy jam tunes from time to time?
It's definitely, it's not functioning anymore because we had to gut the whole thing out to put lights in there and to make it a mechanical puppet. It was definitely something, before this was going to be Aladdin, this was a sci-fi epic that actually took place in another universe. And part of the reason I chose to make it in the future was because I knew I wouldn't be able to make a lot of new things. So a lot of this is Mad Maxed, where it's just junk from the past kind of kit bashed together. So super glue was definitely my friend making this, but it made sense kind of in the future of these films. This is where, manufacturing is dead, and a lot of people, including Aladdin, they kind of take junk from the past and they upcycle it into things that they can use in the present day. So that actually made it kind of, it still wasn't easy making, a mechanical puppet like this, but having things like a boom box and other, radio parts or toy parts that we could cut apart and flip upside down and spin around and repaint them and stuff. It was just a really cool experience. That was some of my favorite stuff, was doing the kit bashing, for sure.
Now you know why when George sees the Star Wars prop replicas and toys and whatnot, he goes, "This is better than the stuff we made the movie with."
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like all the problems they had with R2-D2, that just some of the stories of how they problem solved a lot of that stuff was crazy.
Oh yeah. Just the stories, especially for that original film, of being out in the desert, the stuff that Anthony Daniels talks about, and Kenny Baker when he was with us, just nuts. But let's keep it on character. We'll go to the dark side here, and we're going to ask you who your least favorite Star Wars character is.
Gosh.
And if that changes every day, we've got a problem.
Yeah. The only characters I'm not a fan of is sometimes if there are aliens that don't look like Star Wars aliens, then I've got issues with that.
Like example,
I feel like there's a certain aesthetic. One example, actually, as much as I love the first 3 episodes of Mandalorian, that first alien that gets apprehended by Mando, that's kind of like the blue fish
Mithril
guy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so like I think that guy's a little bit off. There's 2 aliens that always come to mind, and they're in The Force Awakens, which I like The Force Awakens, but there's 2 aliens that they're almost like happy faces, like giant smiley faces with legs and arms, but they're hairy and they've just got 2 big dots for eyes. They are the most goofy, like un-Star Wars alien, like way more un-Star Wars than Jar Jar. And every time I see those, I'm just like, what?
I'll keep an eye out. I'll keep an eye out for those. It's not ringing a bell, but as soon as I see it again, I'll go, those were the ones that Matt was talking about. All right. We got one last question here, and thinking if this one needs a variation, I think I'll give it to you fairly straight up. But if there was another Star Wars movie to be made, and George Lucas was directing it, and you were in it, Matt Busch, in a Star Wars movie directed by George Lucas, what would you like to hear him say after he hollers "cut" on your last scene?
Oh my gosh. Well, George he's not very warm with his actors, so I can't imagine him saying much to anyone. Other, that was a really good performance there, Matt. So I guess I'd like to hear that, but I can't imagine him.
We got to
saying
complete
that
with the
anyone.
impression. I like it too.
Yeah.
I like it. Now this is about what you would like to hear him say, not what would he most likely say, because he would most likely not say anything. He'd say something to somebody else that would then say something.
But I like how Matt's not setting the bar too high when it comes to George heaping praise on him. Yeah.
I like the realist take.
Exactly.
Now, if you were going to be, actually, if you were going to have a role in making a Star Wars film with George Lucas, would you want to be on camera, or would you rather be behind the camera? What gig would you really like to have on a Star Wars movie?
I'm sure I would be better served behind. But of course, the ego in me, who wouldn't want to see themselves as like a dashing, Carillion smuggler or something like that? Who wouldn't want to see that? But I would probably, it would probably be better if I was behind the camera, in front of the camera, than in front of the camera.
But we know what you really want to be. You want to be a dashing Corellian smuggler in the Star Wars universe. Well, Matt, thank you so much for hanging with us. So what are the best places for people to go? You say the Kickstarter is winding down.
Yeah, if you go to the easiest way to find it, if you go to Kickstarter.com, and if you just look up Aladdin anything, Aladdin 3477 will pop right up. There's 2 weeks left. Definitely check out all of the cool rewards and the toys and everything. Plus, that'll show you the movie trailer, which you can also find on YouTube if you look up Aladdin 3477. And the movie trailer just hit 2 million views, which is bananas. So
wow, man!
So cool.
Congrats!
And you're worried about a few thumbs up, huh? You got 2 million views on your trailer.
I was.
Giddy
wow!
up.
Congratulations!
Off to the races. We got a little tribute to Peter Mayhew. He's going to be his name will be featured as an executive producer. How did that all come about?
Yeah, you know what? Over the years, I've just done a lot of work designing like coins and stuff for the foundation. And Peter was always just a huge supporter of my work. He has a lot of my pieces in his collection, and so the Peter Mayhew Foundation, they do all kinds of awesome things. Like they provide toys for children's hospitals. They provide help everywhere. But every year they have a little bit of money set aside, and they usually find an artist to support. And sometimes it's like if there's an artist that can't afford to get into Artist Alley or something like that, they'll just find something really, really awesome to do. And so this year they thought they would support me at the executive producer level of the Kickstarter. And so it's just wild. It's just such an honor. They wanted Peter's name to be attached as executive producer, which is just words can't describe how awesome that is to me. That is just amazing.
Congrats. So Aladdin, we'll be looking for it at the end of the year. And just best of luck to you and everything you're involved in. I know you're probably up to your neck in Aladdin stuff, but if you ever have any more entries into the Star Wars world and you want to talk about it, give us a holler and we'll be sure to spread the word.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much.
You're very welcome. Good luck with everything, Matt.
Thanks, man.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Chewie, get us out of here!
All right. Big thanks to Matt Busch for joining us in the Cantina. Great guy. Check it out. Aladdin 3477, Aladdin3477.com, or go to mattbusch.com, and that's BUSCH. Thanks so much for hanging with us. Don't forget about Rebel Force Radio over on Patreon. We would love to have you over there. Just go to rebelforceradio.com, click on that Patreon banner, and boom, you'll be sent over to select the tier that fits you and your budget the best. But I'll tell you what, it's pretty darn cheap. $1 a month gets you in the door and gets you those exclusive podcasts. So if that's what you're looking for. Also, over on the rebelforceradio.com website, you can get clips of those exclusive podcasts, so you can get a taste of what awaits you if you become a Patreon supporter. Again, those exclusive podcasts you can't get anywhere else. Also, you could jump to the head of the line for the Rebel Force Radio after shows, like we do the Bad Batch, we do Mandalorian, and I know you're going to have a lot to say about Season 3 of The Mandalorian. If you want to make sure that your call gets on the program, you got to be a member of Star Wars, Rebel Force Radio Patreon. Don't forget to watch us on YouTube. That's where we do all of our live streams. They're exclusive on YouTube. We're not streaming anywhere else, just on YouTube. But the whole Rebel Force Radio channel on YouTube has a ton of content. It really is a great place to start if you're new, for example, to Rebel Force Radio. Maybe you just discovered us through the live streams. Check us out over on YouTube. We've got lots of playlists. We've got the full show audio that's available. Of course, all of the live streams are there, as well as In the Cantina segments. Going back many, many years. We've been doing this a long time. So all of that is available over on YouTube. We would love for you to subscribe. Costs you nothing. And also, if you watch one of our videos, please leave a comment. YouTube loves that stuff. They call it engagement. So engage with our content over there on YouTube and the website for all things and everything Rebel Force Radio, rebelforceradio.com. Look at Puppet Lando. I love Puppet Lando up there hanging out with Grogu in the pram.
Canon. Totally canon.
It is canon.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But not only do you get a just a wonderful view of all of the content coming out of Rebel Force Radio, but also the free previews of some of the stuff that's available on Patreon. So even though you might not be a Patreon supporter, you can still see what's being released, and that's all over at our website, rebelforceradio.com. We are on all of the social media platforms. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on Instagram. Follow us at Rebel Force Radio. On Twitter, we are at RFR Rebel Force. But the best way you can support us, the best way, is by telling your friends about us. Keep listening. Talk about us at the water cooler. You know, Mando Season 3 is coming up. We know that you're going to be talking about it at the day job. So you know what? Not only do I watch The Mandalorian on Disney+, but I also watch this live stream on YouTube, and they talk about it. They take live phone calls. It's a great way to hang out with fellow Star Wars fans and digest and dissect each and every episode of new Star Wars content. So tell everybody about it. Please keep listening. Subscribe if you can to the podcast feed. If you are able to leave us a review, we would love to have those reviews. Just one rule, please.
Make them good.
And we will be back next week. Bad Batch After Show live stream Wednesday, 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. And, of course, more weekly Rebel Force Radio at the end of the week. So until then, for Rebel Force Radio, I'm Jason.
I'm Jimmy Mack.
And remember,
The Force will be with you, always.
Why don't you just go out and get a job?